Welcome everybody to another of the VVBGA UVM Extension Winter Webinar Series. This is the second of our greenhouse webinars featuring the illustrious Jack Manix of Walker Farm here in Dummerston. Jack, thank you so much for joining. He's going to be talking about his systems for growing bedding plants. And I will pull up the slides so we can proceed with your talk. All right, there we are.
Oh boy.
Take it away, Jack.
All righty. Well, I noticed that the last webinar, Chris had started a tradition of singing before the show, and I want him to know that that tradition ends here. So I won't be doing any songs, and you'll appreciate that. Well, thanks everybody for coming, and I hope I can supply some information that will help you in the growing season, because I know bedding plants have sure helped us, and the money from the bedding plants has pretty much bought all my vegetable equipment, so that's good. Okay, next. So as vegetable growers, and especially as greenhouse growers, it just seems like we're always on the edge, of a catastrophe. I know I've been there many times, and so hopefully some of these ideas and tips will help bring you and back from the edge a little bit, and can help maybe save a crop, or certainly help with the season. Okay. I always run this meter in the background because I've been known to exaggerate a little bit. And if you hear it going off, then, you can take what I say with a grain of salt. Alrighty. So, this, I was thinking the other day, because we've been at this a long time, and we've done fairly well. And I was, thinking, why have we done so well? And I think it's because of the different streams, having varying streams of income, having multiple sources, so that if something goes down, something else can pick it up. And I really feel that the farms that I know that have done really well have done well by having an early season, and especially with selling plants or bedding plants. And so even though Pooh Sprague has told me to stop telling everybody, I am going to tell you some of the ways that I think things have worked well for us, and bringing in income. Okay. So we have right now 26 greenhouse structures, and it's a real buffet of styles. A lot of Ed's, Ledgewood greenhouses, and Nexus, and Rimmel, and XS Smith, and Harnois Gutter Connect we have. So they all are great. I really like the ones especially with top vents, and the more I learned from my first one, actually, that the more technology you can put into a greenhouse, the better. Okay. So one of the things that we're a split farm organic, and we're a garden center and an organic farm stand. So one of the things I was talking about, streams of income, we found when we first started selling bedding plants, flowers, and vegetable plants, since people were coming to us, we could add a lot of other things that they were interested in buying. So we sell quite a few trees, perennials. We got a shipment of perennials from Plant Group in Connecticut every week. We sell a lot of shrubs, especially fruit trees and bushes were off the charts, especially during COVID. Tropicals are very popular now with house plants, and of course conifers that do well in Vermont, and succulents are certainly fashionable at this point. Okay, one of our main bedding plants, we actually sell more flowers than vegetable starts, but we do sell a lot of vegetable starts, and we grow all those certified organic. Okay. And in this neck of the woods, if you don't sell produce and vegetable plants organic, then good luck to you. Good luck with your marketing, because that is really the driving force between our vegetable farm stand sales and the start of the season. Okie doke. So like I say, we also sell a lot of flower starts. We're lucky enough to have this young woman Daisy that propagates. We have a stock plant house that we overwinter, and she propagates a lot of rare coleus and salvias and fuchsias and things like that. And they did an article on us in the New York Times a number of years ago, and I told them that she could root a broomstick. So she's very talented. Unfortunately, she spends the winter in Colombia paragliding. So one of the chief assets in my farm is generally flying 2 miles in the sky, up in the sky. So I'm always a little worried and glad to have her back at the end of February. Okay. So this is one of the main ways we stay back from the edge. And most people know about it, but I thought I'd go over it. This is what you should buy before you even buy a greenhouse, is get your alarm system down. And the Manix system has worked really well for us. We have 20 of our greenhouses have heaters and monitors in them. The tunnels out back just have sort of one long range monitor, which I'll show you in a minute. And that sort of gives us an idea what's going on back there. But this is the standard monitor. It's just a temperature gauge, okay? And if you want to upgrade a little bit, we have these in our tomato houses and some of our other houses that also measures the humidity. And you can set all kinds of alerts and alarms for these. It's really neat. You can get, you can monitor the battery level and high-low temperature, humidity, and they'll send you either a text, an email, or a very pleasant robo phone call. Okay. And they run on these little batteries, which are, fairly inexpensive. If you ever buying these somewhere, you always want to check the date on the back of them, because occasionally you'll have some that are past due. But we replace these about every year at the beginning of the season, just to make sure everything is going well. Okie doke. And this is the one we have in some of our houses that are, we're lucky enough to have a wireless down at our main greenhouse, and it goes pretty much throughout the farm. But a couple of our greenhouses are a ways away, and so this it costs a little extra, but it really picks up the signal, because the signal does have some problems occasionally going through metal hoops and the plastic. Okie doke. So this is I feel is important for the temperature monitors and the small humidity temperature monitors that we have. It looks like a little beehive. It's from ambient weather, and it shades it from solar glare and from any kind of breeze or anything really. It keeps it more accurate, gives a more accurate reading. I will point out in front of that is a DRAM thermostat. We replaced our hardwired 110 Dayton thermostats many years ago. We were lucky enough to have the guru of greenhouse technology, John Bartok, did an energy assessment on our farm, and he turned us on to these DRAM thermostats, which theoretically pay for themselves in the first year. But there's only a 1 degree temperature differential, where the hard ones had like a 5 degree temperature differential. So those were really, I feel those are really beneficial. Okie doke. This is something we found out the hard way many years ago. You got to watch your fuel tanks, and one of the advantages of the Manix system, okay, is they have these gauges that can go on your LP propane tanks and send you a reading, and you can also wire those for alerts. So I have those set when they're 15%, they give me an alert. And we have 5 of these 1,000-gallon propane tanks. My gas company wasn't particularly thrilled that we decorated them, but the chickens seem to like it. Okie doke. So these go on your monitor, goes right on top of the gas tank, and the cover goes over it, so it protects it from the weather, and they usually stick the antenna out a little bit. Okay. But you have to make sure that your propane tank, and your gas company can do this, it needs an R3D gauge on the tank. And some gas companies actually will even supply you with the monitor, and you can tap into that if you're lucky enough. my gas company is the biggest gas company in the world, AmeriGas, and they don't supply me with anything. So, so this is the screenshot of my of the app on my phone, and as you can see, the propane tank monitor on there. I have we call one of our furthest greenhouses Pluto. It has the extended range monitor, and then the other greenhouse. After you get to 12, you have to start naming your greenhouses so you don't have a catastrophe. Not that I'm superstitious, but then when there's one also in our storage trailer to monitor temperatures of where we might be storing. It's not operational right now, but where we might be storing onions or potatoes, or another one that stores root crops. Okie doke. So you can really, go nuts with the control systems. Where we have, I think our top level greenhouses are made by Nexus because the trusses are all welded steel, and the technology that comes with them is pretty nice. And so we have, I think in 4 of the greenhouses, we have energy curtains and a weather station that can tell you if it's raining out or snowing out, or what the temperature is, or what the wind speed is. And that all is, it goes back to the main greenhouse controllers, and adjusts the vents and the top vent and the side vents, the energy curtain. And one thing that was pretty cool, when I first got these, I came down during a snowstorm, and I noticed that the energy curtain was open a third. And I was going, what the heck is going on here? Why is the energy curtain open? It's a cold night. Well, it turns out that the weather station picked up that there was moisture, that there was below 32 degrees, and it opened up the curtain a third to let the heat go up and melt the snow on the roof. So another case where the computer was smarter than I was. Okie doke. This is kind of cool too. It's an aspirator. So instead of just hanging a dial in your greenhouse that could be affected by solar glare, this has a little circuit board in it, and it has a fan, and so it passes the air through the unit to the circuit board and gives you a pretty precise reading of what the actual temperature is in the greenhouse, and not just in one spot. And this will also tells the computer whether it's day or night, and adjusts accordingly for your heaters and vents. Okie doke. And if you're going to put any kind of sophisticated electrical equipment, computers in the greenhouse, I would recommend this. An average surge protector is not going to protect you against the lightning strike, but these intermatic surge protectors will take a bolt, because there's a green light on them, and I have had them turn red after a thunderstorm. Unfortunately, they need to be replaced then, and I think they're like $250, but it does save you a lot of money with a lot of electrical equipment. So I have these where we have greenhouse computers. Okie doke. But you can't always depend on the internet, and even though we've a few years ago made one of the best investments I think we've made in putting in auto generators, so we don't have to go out 3 a.m. when a car hits a utility pole, or a snowstorm knocks the power out. The power comes on, and it really saves the day. But this is Thermaline. You can still get these on the internet. I know eBay has them, or a lot of the greenhouse supply companies have them. It's a hardwired system. I know that Ed Persons had these, and they run on a thermostat wire. I think he told me about them originally. He had a neat system where he had a wire hooked to a thermostat wire hooked to each greenhouse, and he had a toggle system in his house, so he could, when the alarm went off, he could toggle back and forth and determine which greenhouse had the problem. Ours are daisy chained, and in the old days, before I had energy efficient heaters, I had galvanized exhaust pipes, and I would run around and feel the exhaust pipe and the cold one was the problem. But now with the iMonitor system, I can just look on my phone and I can tell which greenhouse is low. Okie doke. The thermal alarm company used to make a unit that was really neat, and that you run the wire to. Mine failed actually last year. So I got this unit in the lower right-hand corner from Noel's greenhouse, and that will also, that is a wireless system. It comes with those just one unit that's on the left there that has a high and a low thermostat you can set, and runs on a battery. But you know, like I say, that can go down. So next slide. That's the inside of it. And you can see that there's a white thermostat wire that's leading into it, has a hookup for that thermostat wire. So I know with any kind of problem that I should be covered. It has a battery backup, and the alarm system is pretty strong on this one too. I always said that my old alarm system would wake up the dead from the cemetery up the road. It was so you don't stay in bed when that thing goes off. You know, it really knocks you out of bed. These we invested in a number of years ago. We used to have a lot of Dayton heaters, which, you know, they start off like at 70-75%. Like I said before, you know, you could go around and feel the galvanized pipe to see which was hot and cold. And those galvanized pipes are really hot, you know, so that means a lot of heat is going out the greenhouse that you could be using. And as they get older, they may be dropping down to 50-55%. And so you're really, you know, wasting a lot of money. But these, the one on the left there is the Affinity 93, and that is vented with PVC pipe. So, you know, not that much heat is coming out of there, and most of it's being used in the greenhouse. I pointed out the one on the right. If we have old heaters, we generally use them as a backup heater somewhere in the greenhouse. But Griffin Greenhouse Supply has these fall expos where they have these Modine units. They're a smaller unit, and they're pretty efficient. I think they're like 80-85%, and they're usually on sale. They really, it shows you how much money they're making normally, but they're usually on sale for $700 to $800 off the price. So if you're ever interested in these, you should sign up for the Griffin Greenhouse Supply newsletter, and they let you know when those expos are, because you can pre-buy at that time too a lot of greenhouse plastic and soils and equipment, and there's quite a savings. So we use a lot of different containers, and I thought I'd just go over some of these because people may be unfamiliar with the terminology on a lot of these. I mean, these are just average hanging baskets. Pretty much all our hanging baskets, we go for a larger hanging basket that's like a premium size. It's a 12-inch, which gives us a good soil capacity, good water retention, and just really looks good when our baskets are pretty much in bloom. And we use a lot of we do a lot of what they call a Euro style combination baskets with mixed flowers in them, complementary flowers. They pretty much hide the basket anyway, but we find that the bigger baskets make a really nice impression. The smaller ones we might use for succulents or house plants, just to get a price point. Okie doke. And these are some of the pots we use. The one on the top left is a 6-inch terracotta, and we will upscale like geraniums and various premium sort of cutting plants, and then some combo plants. The one on the right at the top is what we use for herb bowls, which are very popular. You might put like a basil, parsley, rosemary, sage, thymes, chives in those, and sell them with organic soil. And of course, the proven winter pots, if you're growing proven winters from Pleasant View, which are very popular, you have to use their pots. They're a 4.5-inch pot, fit in a 45-15 tray. The terminology in that is 4.5-inch pot, and it holds 15. And so we have these custom pots made up. I'll show you a few more in different colors, because we don't really have a POS system. We're able to up price, I should say, certain plants by using different colored pots. And on the bottom, we use tags And I'll show you those later too. But we had some custom tags made for some of our rarer annuals. We call them Walker Farm Blue Ribbon plants, and we have those for picture tags for plants that you can't buy tags for in the trade, like Brauelia Americana and Nicotiana mutabilis and things that are very popular, but it's hard for people to know what they'll look like in the garden. So that a picture is really your silent salesperson. So these are pretty much the main packs that we use, and on the top are the 6-packs. A lot of people use 4-packs. We do use a few 4-packs. And the terminology on these are the one on the top left is the 606, and these guys fit in a 1020 tray, skeleton tray. And so 606 means 6 packs and 6 cells. And then there's 806, and that would be 8 packs and 6 cells, or 48 cells in a tray. And then for celery and scallions and some other things, we use a 1206, which is 70 would be 12 6-packs or 72 cells in a tray. And these are retail packs that tear apart. And then again, on the bottom, they we have our blue pots, we have a yellow pot, and our traditional green pot. We also have a black 4.5-inch pot. And those, like I say, are used for price points. But I will say too, just on that last one, pre-ordering, if you need a colored pot, you need to order almost a year in advance, because the plastic companies will put them on their schedule generally in the fall. So when they get large enough orders, and I've had really good luck. I used to get them from Griffin, and they went a little expensive, so I pre-ordered from Notes and a company called Koba, Koba in New Jersey for the pots. And they say that 3/4 of the people will not buy a plant without a tag, and I can't believe there's still 1/4 of the people that will. So it's pretty crucial to have your plants tagged. And you can get the stock photo tags. The main places we get them online are West Rock, which used to be the old John Henry company, and the Master Tag, which is another company, and buy them online, and they're relatively inexpensive, so they're a good thing to get. Okay, and I know that there's a lot of guys online now with 5 years, some even 11 years experience. Will tell you how to squeeze more chard into your 3/4 of an acre, but I'm telling you that the way to do it, you're all probably pretty good growers. You know how to grow plants. Bringing a few flats of broccoli or parsley or lettuce starts to early markets will add quite a bit of income to whatever greens you might be selling there. So this is probably our best labor saving device on the farm. This soil machine, we actually now have 4 of them, because I have to have two different ones for organic, and I have 2 for non-organic. Once end of February comes, these are pretty much going 7 days a week until almost the end of May. So we're putting out a lot of product. Okay. And this, I think, I don't know if Jake's listening and who, but we were on a great tour that Vern, when Vern brought us up to Canada, and we were at a cucumber greenhouse in Quebec, and the owner said, "Hey, would you like to see the soil machine that my brother-in-law made for my sister who grows flowers in the greenhouse next door?" And I had been looking at various machines. You needed like a ramp, a mixer, and a pot filler, and it was going to be like $30,000. And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to look at it." And we saw this with this this isn't the same model. They've upscaled it a little bit since then, but we saw it and we said, "Oh yeah, that is really nice." If he ever starts making them commercially, we'd like to order one. And I think the 3 of us bought the first 3 off the line, and from Sylvain. He's a great guy. The first time we went up there, he was welding them up in his airplane hangar. The next time I went up there, he had a cement floor laid out for a small factory. And the third time I went up there, he had like 20 guys working there. So there's all kinds of different models. This is actually the SB02, I believe. You can get them with conveyor belts and brushes and waterers and all kinds of things. We like this because it's a simple model. Even though we don't move them around, we can put all kinds of different containers through quickly without having to change anything. This one, actually, I just picked up this weekend. I found it on Marketplace. It's almost brand new. I saved like $10,000. It was from a cannabis facility in Plymouth, Mass. And when I got it home and I had one of my employees come over and help me unload, he said, "Hey, this smells like pot." So 2.5 hours in the back of a pickup, driving home, and it's still, I don't know, maybe the CBD effect has helped loosen my joints a little bit. But they, like I say, this is a great investment if you can afford it. It just saves a lot of backbreaking work. Oh, okay. So the next thing that's been really valuable to us is I got this, like, I think at least 20 years ago, a heated bench, because as tomato growers know, you're not going to be planting very successfully tomatoes in mid-March unless you have heat underneath the plants, and we run hot water under our tomato plants, hot water pipes. But if you're trying to get things to root in February and March, then you really need to warm the trays, and especially with cuttings. And also, we do a lot of grafted tomato plants. We do a bunch for us and do a bunch for other growers. So in order to keep these things growing, you really need some bottom. Okie doke. Okay. Oops. Deja vu. So yeah, for seedlings, we're starting this time of year a little more advanced than that now, but we start like Lisianthus and begonia seed, and for early flowers that they take a long time, and herbs, herb seed. So it really works nice. So here's a little close up of it. Just these rubber hot water tubes that, and I'll show you in the next slide how they're moved around. Shoot, I don't think it shows the bottom, but there's a little Taco 07 plumber's pump on the bottom, and this the thermostat under the pressure tank, you set that for, I usually set it for like 80, and the hot water is pumped out and circulates, then it shuts off when it's warm during the day. So yeah, just I don't know how we would be able to root cuttings early enough to get on the market without this hot water system. Really good investment, and it's just held up for so long. A couple of things that we use that are really important to us: Root Shield Plus, wettable powder. We never water with plain water. We always are watering. We either have a fertilizer, and we find it's better to fertilize more often than to try to do it all at once. We either have Root Shield in it, or we have acidified water for the crops that need a more acid fertilizer. So, I'll go into that a little more later, but it's really important to know your water, which, like I said, I think there's a slide that we'll get into a little bit later. This has worked really well for us for fertilizing through an injector. We use this where needed. We use it on all our organic bedding plants, but we also will pump it through drip irrigation for tomato houses as needed. I found this, we used to use, different fertilizers, but they were only good if you used them beforehand and kept the fertilization up. The nice thing about this, it will bring back the green. So if you have some bigger tomato plants or vegetable plants that maybe got really hot and they're starting to fade a little bit, the nutrient is out of the compost that you planted them in, compost soil mix, then the applications of Nature's Source will bring the green back. So you can keep them competitive with the conventionally grown plants at Agway or Walmart or wherever. Okey doke. This is another thing that we put through the drip that we found out. Biostimulants. Biostimulants are a little funny. There's a lot of research on them. I know that all the flower greenhouses are getting into them now. It's like nobody really knows what they do, but they make things grow better. We started using this in our tomato greenhouses, and it's like kelp and humates, and it just really makes a big difference. So we like to mess around with some of these things. This year we'll be messing around with mycorrhizae applications, and and we're just starting to learn about biochar. Okie doke. So I apologize for this. This is an outdated slide my wife pointed out to me because prices have gone up a lot. We don't get $3 for tomatoes anymore. We actually get $5.49. So I wrote that down here. A $14.96. I imagine beet greens and chard, they've gone up 10 cents a pound in 20 years. Not that much, but $18,000 on tomato plants would be more accurate now. But if you go to the next slide, you can fit 750 1020 flats in a 14x96 greenhouse, or you can fit 1500 in a 28x96. And if you do the math on it, and our price now is actually more than is around $5 a pack, and so that comes out to $30,000. And if you're using the 18 pots per flat, it's called 1835. So it's 18 3.5 inch pots in a flat, and we're actually getting more than that now. I think $6 or so, and that comes out to like $81,000. So you're saying, well, the greens are essential for our market. Well, the green we put through a lot of our greenhouses. We put 3 crops through some, and we put through 2 crops through almost everyone. So after bedding plants are done, if we have a house that's done early, we're going to be putting in some tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant for fall production, in case the field, like they did this year, had a problem. And we'll be putting in fall greens for our winter CSA in almost every organic house that's soil based. So you can put multiple crops through. You don't have to give up on the greens. You can even put some early greens through and still do bedding plants if you're up north. Okie doke. But with more income and more investment, it does take a little more. We have a large operation. There's a lot of labor and energy costs to start with. We do the farm card CSA, which we just launched, and that brings in an incredible amount of money from really nice customers that help us get started. And if anybody, I forgot to mention that if anybody wants to see our plant list on walkerfarm.com, we have pretty much everything but the specialty plant list has been updated, so you can see a lot of the varieties. We go a little nuts with the varieties. So you also be dealing with larger numbers, and so you have to keep it in perspective. If you were making 8% on 100,000, that was 8,000. But if you're making 2% on $1 million, it's 20,000. So, and you want to always keep your eye on the net. We do 1/3 of our gross in the month of May with the garden center sales. And like I was talking about with the diversified streams of income, we had a pretty good year. Our vegetable crops really took a beating, but May was tremendous, except for that one night, which we protected everything, and everybody pretty much knows about, that killed the apple crop. But generally, sunny weekends in May mean we're going to have a good year. And of course, when you're young and just starting out, it's really hard to prepay in the fall. That's when you need it the most. But if you can buy and prepay, you can get some pretty nice discounts. Okie doke. So I'll just go into our IPM for a minute. I think I've talked on this before, but 95% of our pesticide management is beneficials and biologics, but occasionally we do have to spray, and these are products that have worked well for us. Nemesis is actually a drench, and that has really helped us control, pretty much eliminate with cucumerus the thrips issues that we had, and of course it was developed for fungus gnats, so that is really good. There are so many new organic products out on the market, and I have a list of greenhouse magazines in the back, and those are the ones where you'll find out about them, because it's really hard to find out about all the ones available. And what has driven that? It's the hemp and the cannabis and the CEA, which is controlled environment, where they're grown, unfortunately, hydroponics in buildings, so, and call them organic. But we still get the benefit of using some of the organic products that have been developed to support that industry. How are we doing on this? Oh, not too bad. So it's, I know you're watching the Super Bowl ad, just a lot of ads for movies with invaders from space. If you want to see a good battle, you could look in your greenhouse, because this is, especially if you're getting beneficials, because this is what's going on. Okie doke. So one of the things that's worked really well for us is, and Cheryl and Margaret taught us at the UVM IPM conferences. Those have been tremendous, and I suggest everybody go to those. Probably one of the best educational experiences that we've had. I like to say we have 4 expert IPM people. I have Daisy, Heather, and Lindsay that are good at scouting, ordering, and applying. We have me, and I'm good at paying the tab. Okay, so this is banker plants. We've got these in already this year. This is like an oak grass with the oak aphids on them, and right now we're letting those are closed up, and we let those grow and multiply. And actually, this week I have the first. What do I have coming in? I have Ophidius ervi, which it actually takes a different plant. We started working with Carol at IPM Labs, and last year we found that fava beans are a nice banker plant for Ophidius ervi, which is, if you're gonna go into hunting down your aphids, you need to know what kind of aphids you have. And if you have peach and melon aphids, you can use Ophidius comani or matricari. But the foxglove aphid is a bigger, faster aphid, and you really need the ervi to take care of that. And we've had excellent results with that. It costs a little more, but we had a good program going with that. Okie doke. So these are called bug dorms, and you can get these online. We have a bunch of them because we use sort of a succession. Want to go to the next slide, Vern? Do I have it on there? Yeah, it doesn't really have it on there, but what we'll do is we'll put the banker plants in a tent and let the population of the aphids that came with them grow. And then we have another tent, and we'll take all those out of there except for one. We'll start, because we've started some new grass pots, and we'll put the other bankers in a tent, and we'll apply the comani or matricaria to them. And then we have a third tent where there's a lot of parasitization going on, and those are ready to distribute. So you're starting your own sector, you're saving a lot of money, and it's amazing to watch this parasitization go. Of course, there's predators too, and we have had pretty good luck with those. I think, like with cucumerus and the nemesis thrips are not an issue anymore. Persimmilus pretty much is taking care of all of our two-spotted spider mite, and Encarsia formosa pretty much eliminates whitefly. Aphids are a perennial problem, and especially in our greenhouses. So we got shipments in every week except for December through February. We get a shipment every other week, and so we're able to stay on top of it. But if you're overwintering a greenhouse, you probably know what it's like. So these are the predators and parasites that we're using for the various issues that we have. And like I say, IPM Labs, Carol is a great scientist and she really knows her stuff. So working with her and getting advice from her staff, could really help you out. So you have to remember, you have to sort of be proactive, because you sort of have to order these the week ahead of time. You're going to order these like on a Thursday or a Friday, and they're going to come in the next like Thursday or Friday. Okie doke. And this occasionally we have to use, and especially I have to use this on some of our summer BHNs in greenhouses for hornworm line dipel. But this is a really nice sprayer. It's a battery operated sprayer. No more hand cranking and breaking your arm muscles. It starts right up. It's silent, and it just does a really nice job. Okie doke. So a couple of ways that we, more than a couple of ways that we meet the challenge of try to do the best we can with quality, have really good labels. Signage is incredibly important in selling bedding plants, because like I say, those are your sales people. We have really excellent salespeople, but those are super important to have. And specializing, maybe you don't want to do everything nutty like we do, like have 140 varieties of heirloom tomatoes and like 80 varieties of hot peppers, including the Carolina Reaper, and we just got a new hot one, it's even hotter than that. But maybe you specialize in cold crops or Romanesco, bring in Romanesco and cheddar cauliflower or something that's not available probably in the Walmart. But plant care is crucial. You have to be on top of the job every day. And the big thing for us, especially with the flower bedding plants, are display gardens. People like to see what they're going to look like, how they're going to perform. And so do we. We do, it's almost like a little trial garden. But I call the next one party tricks, because instead of spending a lot of money on advertising, we always do something crazy. We brought one of our old tractors in our display greenhouse one time, set up a big display, be your own farmer, had a cutout of couple of farmers there that people could stick their heads through and take a picture of. I got one this year. I can't even tell my staff, because they're going to think I really am off the charts. But it's going to be quite spectacular. And then of course service and info. We have wireless through the farm, through the retail area, especially in the guest wireless. So you can't be expected to know everything, but you should know how to find the information. And we're able to, pull out our phone. A customer has a question: do you need 2 pairs of trees to pollinate? And they can look that up quick and check and give them info right on the spot. And of course, appreciating. We just live in an amazing area with great support. And of course, Vermont is like the #1 sustainable state in the country. So, we're all fortunate to live here. Okie doke. These are kind of important to have. I don't use the injector on the left anymore. I think it was a Dosatron. You get really good in injectors from, we find from Trevor at Brookdale, and you can set those at the rate you need to apply your fertilizer. You'll have to do the research to see what crop you're fertilizing and see what it takes. If you can't afford that, for many years when we started out, we used the old faithful hose on the right. It sucks up solution at a 16-to-1 ratio, so you can do the math on that too, and it works pretty well. Okie doke. When you get into the advanced stages, and hopefully you get there sooner than I did, you get a EC and pH meter. These are critical if you want to do a really quality crop. You need to know the EC is the electrical conductivity of your fertilizer solution, to know that you're actually applying the correct amount, or when you mix it up, the fertilizer is what it said it's going to be. And the pH meter, of course, is important because you have crops like vinca and petunias that might need like a 5.5 pH, and you have marigolds and geraniums who are going to like a 6.5. I found that the EC meter actually worked fairly well on organic liquid fertilizer solutions too. You get a rough idea. Generally, you're fertilizing at 150 parts per million, and I found that it measured the salts fairly accurately, so you could experiment with that. The other thing that I was talking about before is a water test. It's really important to know your water, because you can know the pH, but you need to know the alkalinity. You could have an alkalinity of 135, or you could have an alkalinity of like 500 something. And alkalinity is a buffer. So you think maybe that you're applying a acidic or a sweet fertilizer, and you may not, because your water is altering what you're applying. You want to bring your water down to a neutral state so that the fertilizer you're applying is actually supplying the correct fertilizer and pH. And that test, and you can go to the state of Vermont, and they will give you a lot of info on what you might need to know. And also there's usually info online that you can find. But it's knowing, actually scientifically what you're applying to your plants is crucial to becoming a really good grower. So I would suggest them getting something like, you can get, they're fairly inexpensive. If you're growing Calibrachoa, for example, that takes a pH of like 5.3. And if you're applying a water every day that's around with a 6 pH, you're not going to have good luck with Calibrachoa. And the same in reverse, if you're growing marigolds and your water is very acidic, then you're going to get redness on the foliage. So, and they'll tell you probably at Extension, probably can look it up for you, how much citric acid you might need to apply to like a 50-gallon drum of your water solution that's going to be sucked up by your injector to neutralize that. Or if you had to add something else, we have, slightly acidic, slightly high pH water, so we do need to add a little acidifier to that. Okie doke. There's another thing that if you don't have one, go out and buy one on Amazon or wherever today. These emergency heaters have saved me numerous times. They're really inexpensive. When a heater goes down, you hook them to a 100-pound propane tank. They'll run almost 2 days. And you have to be a little careful if your greenhouse is low. I almost burned a hole through the top of it one time I came in, and it was wrinkled at the top, so I had to crank it down. But in generally a higher greenhouse, I loaned 3 of these to a friend of mine in May last year, and it saved its tomato tunnels during that cold night, and they just pay for themselves right away. The other thing too you have to look at is who you want for your clientele. I don't know many places that charge a good price that have gone out of business, but I know numerous places that have been too inexpensive that have not been able to make it. Okay. Just some resources for I think Vern will post these so you can check them out. I don't know if many people know about GeoSeed. Thompson and Morgan used to be this company from England that had all these great plants. GeoSeed has amazing variety of flower seeds and vegetable seeds, and I think most of them are untreated. Just make sure if you need to have them untreated that you put that on your order. ENR seed is run by the Amish. It's maybe a little bit harder to deal with. You have to call an answering service or fax in it or email in your order to this answering service, which gives it to these guys, but you can call them too in order. And they have the largest variety of organic and untreated seeds in any catalog I know. So they're based out of Illinois. I think it's Illinois. And good prices too. So check them out. And if you're going to do a lot of plant material or even seeds, I suggest you get a broker. Scott Stewart is our broker for Henry Michelle and Lynn Bly for ball seed horticulture. And if you have any issues at all, they take care of them for you. And a good source for sales is, and I think he's the Vermont representative, is Jim Tomlin at Griffin Greenhouse Supply. I will say another thing, if you're ordering a lot of stuff through some of these, well, not through the seeds or anything, but equipment and plastic and things like that, and there may be room for negotiation. So don't be afraid to ask, is that your best price? Okie doke. These are some of our best sellers. Just that I thought of a few things. Nobody likes to buy like 6 Carolina Reaper peppers. So you get a mixed hot peppers of, jalapeno, maybe a ghost pepper and a poblano and some other odds and ends, and mixed colored peppers. You might be able to put cornitos in there from Johnny's, which are great peppers, or a red, a green, and a yellow. Mixed lettuce is also good too. Herb gardens, I showed those before in the oval pots that we have. Succulents are currently very popular. Calibrachoa is like a small petunia. If you don't know it, it's the most popular annual from cutting, I think, out there right now. And I never can grow enough sun gold cherry tomatoes. It's unbelievable. Bring those to market with you. I guarantee you'll sell out. And heirloom tomatoes are a big draw also to bring customers in when we have those. Okie doke. These are the sources for biologics. And of course, I mentioned the Tri-State Greenhouse IPM Conference is fantastic. And, sound horticulture we used to deal with, it's out on the West Coast, and applied bionomics is great. But an IPM labs is probably the main one you might want to deal with for beneficials in our neck of the woods. But Copert and BioBest also are very good. Okay. And these greenhouse mags, this is where you'll find, how many people have heard of most of these on the bottom there? And they are, advertised. Of course, they advertise them. You call your, like Helena or somebody where you might get your product, and they go, well, we never heard of them, because they advertise them about 6 months before they're available. But there's a lot of product out there. So if you're having some issues with the product you're using, of course, everybody knows, like Entrust is pretty much worthless on thrips. So there's a lot of different products. Okay. So yeah, thank you for coming. I want to thank the 2 people that tuned in to hear me, and I guess that's it. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
So much, Jack.
I should say this is everybody online is like, this is maybe the beginning of me offering a master course. Everybody seems to be offering a master course, but not me. No.
Well, I don't know. That pretty much was a master course. A ton of information packed in. Thanks. And as you mentioned, we'll post the slides so people can get to it. And there are just a few minutes left, but time for a couple questions. Let's see. Neil asked, where did you get that tent? I'm not sure which tent, the bug tent?
I think it was the bug dorm. Okay. That slide is on there. It's you just do a search for bug dorms. I used to have to get them from Taiwan when they first came out, but I think there's the US company that sells them now.
And if you missed it in the chat, Chris did note that the UVM Extension Ag Engineering blog has a great summary of remote monitoring systems, and it takes into account different situations farms might be in with their wireless, etc.
Yep.
There's some thank yous in there. Any other? Oh, and also that Jack did an episode on the Farmers Share podcast. So if that wasn't enough, Jack, for you, you can get more online.
I can't believe that's not enough.
Any other last questions before we sign off?
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions they think of later, especially elderly people like Pooh and Jake, you can contact me through our website, walkerfarm.com.
And when do you open your stand for retail sales, Jack?
Well, a lot of it depends on the weather and Easter, because Easter is an incredible holiday for selling pansies and even early vegetable plants. So it's generally sometime during the first week of April. It's generally in the last few years, it's been the first week of April. It used to be we'd watch the snowstorms, but we don't seem to get those anymore. So it's and we open our display house actually around April 20th. And then the bulk of our stuff used to have everything out for the week before Memorial Day, but with climate change, we have to have everything ready for Mother's Day.
And I see Chris has a question, but before I goes, I'll ask, how many weekends do you require to have the sheriff out there directing traffic in front of your stand?
Uh, usually, we start Mother's Day weekend, and then we have them for 4 or 5 weekends. Yeah, so want to keep our customers alive, and it does a great job.
Chris?
Thanks so much. Every time I visit with you and hear you, it's just abundantly clear you are doing what I think you are meant to do on this earth. I'm wondering how you came, how'd you come to this, and what keeps you going?
Well, we started out with a 7 by 9 foot glass greenhouse from Agway. So, we came to this. I did a little, every year I do a little thing, I call the State of the Farm report. And this year's when I had a little quote from my grandfather that said, when we first got here, we actually did a couple of milking cows and raised some heifers. And he said, when you go out, when a calf is born, you lift it. And then every day you lift it, and it's all small, it's just a small increment. So you should be able to theoretically lift it forever. And so far, we're still able to lift the calf. So I don't know, but it's been a number of years, as you know. What keeps me going is I just love this. A lot of people wake up and go to their job. We wake up and we go to our lives. And I have my partner, my wife, of course, is more important than I am, and our crew. We hire a little over 40 people a year. Our crew is just fantastic. This is one of the first years we have actually nobody leaving the crew, and so we're very fortunate. Which makes me think I'm paying them too much, but that's okay.
Your crew are out there farming on their own. I see at least one person on the call here, Andrew, who I know. Is that a manager at your farm?
I thought it'd only be my employees and they'd be on the payroll, but.
Have you ever counted up? I think Jake has. It's quite a number. I bet your number's up there too.
Yeah, it's great. One of the things that makes me really happy is when I have the kids of former employees, working on the bean and berry crew or whatever. So that's nice.
Question, how many staff at what hours per week?
Well, yeah, so last year was the first year we actually had H2A because I really needed, a lot of our staff leaves for school in August. They say they're going to stay late, but they don't. And I did H2A and it was amazing. So our 2 H2A guys work about 60 hours a week each. But I have most of my crew, and we have 3 sort of crews. We have our farm stand crew, garden center sales crew, which is the most important. Most of those people work 4 to 5 days a week. And then we have our flower crew, and our flower staff will work a good 40 to 50 hours a week during the season, but maybe back off during the summer. And then our main vegetable managers have all work pretty much 40 hours. The kids generally, they work 20 to 30 hours unless they need a car, and then they're working a little more.
Jack, we've hit 1 o'clock, so we're going to call it a wrap, but thank you so much for this wealth of information. Really appreciate it. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
All right, been my pleasure. Take care, everybody. This year, I like to say, we're all going to be rich. So